The Kansas City Chiefs instant reaction post-game show is live across the 580 Sports Talk and 580 WIBW social media channels. Brendan Dwazinski, Dan Lucero, Jake Laban here with you, following what I think can be fairly described as one of the NFL games all time that was played and was, in fact, a football game. Chiefs win 23-20 over the New York Jets. They do not cover. No, I'm definitely not still mad about that. Please do not put in the newspaper that I am mad about the Chiefs not covering. Mahomes slid at the goal line on the final meaningful play of the game. Okay, now that is out of the way, Chiefs win. They're up 17-0 in the early part of this game. Looks like they were going to win by 1,000,000 points. Jets looked terrible. Zach Wilson looked terrible. And then all of a sudden, the script completely flips, and the Chiefs went from the aggressor to suddenly back against the wall, just trying to scrap and claw to survive in this one. Two really uncharacteristic picks by Patrick Mahomes. The officiating was absolute dog water all day. Dan, we'll start with you. What do you take away from this other than the Chiefs win? That's most important, but also, how are you not at least a little bit worried after Zach Wilson looked downright competent, if not, dare I say, good for a large portion of that game?
Well, I think give Zach Wilson credit. He had an out-of-body experience on that first drive of the second half. I mean, he made 3 throws on that drive that were just big-time throws, the kind of throws that all the elite quarterbacks in this league made. And even the one in the end zone for the touchdown was maybe a little bit of an accident, but he got it done. And credit him for that. He blacked out for a drive. He went Joe Flacco in the 2012 NFL playoffs on that drive. Good for him. They didn't score after that. And what I will say about at the end of the day for the Chiefs defense, I don't have any concerns. I think that the Jets set up to make life as easy on Zach Wilson as they possibly could. Short drops, one hitch, one read, get the ball out. They didn't have a lot of time or opportunity for the Chiefs to generate pressure because the ball was getting out so quickly. And Wilson had the accuracy to get those balls out to guys like Garrett Wilson out there in the flat. But when the game got to 20 and the Chiefs offense was floundering, the Chiefs defense played complementary football. We talk about it all the time. And they got some big stops. They were able to be opportunistic and pounce on the mistake that Zach Wilson did make with Turk Wharton recovering the fumble. And if they don't stand tall while the Chiefs offense was struggling there for the better part of the second quarter and into the fourth quarter, then they don't win this game. So to me, I thought it showed the character of the defense. It showed their tackling ability, which I think was really good. Other than one really big Breece Hall run, I thought they were good against the run again. And they stood tall and did what they had to do when they had to do it. My concern is we saw the Chiefs play a team with good cornerbacks, DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, and linebackers who are really good in coverage, in Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley. And the Chiefs couldn't get anybody open. They could not get a soul open down the field. They had to run quick game all night. And that, to me, is another data point in favor of some concern about this young Chiefs wide receiver group and their ability or inability at this point to get that down the field separation to hit on some of the big plays, because it neutered the Chiefs offense after those first 3 drives.
And I think it's fair to say, too, some of the pressure Mahomes faced, and credit to the Jets because they've got talented guys up front, even if it's not the most name brand group of defensive linemen in front 7 players. Quentin Williams is a really darn good player. John Franklin Myers is having a fantastic first quarter of this NFL season. But it was not a super characteristic Mahomes kind of night, Jake. And I know it wasn't all on him, obviously. But when you look at his performance, when you look at the overall offensive performance, really outside of Isaiah Pacheco, and specifically what Dan talked about with the wide receivers not being able to get open against that good coverage secondary and linebacker core, where does your concern level lie with where this offense was tonight?
It's weird because if we are having this conversation, I think Brendan or Dan, I don't remember which one of you text our little kind of group thread. Hey, let's do the recap starting in the fourth quarter because this game's going to get out of hand. So that's how quickly we change our opinion on these games. It's 17-0, Brendan, and you're like, Chiefs going to roll. Chiefs going to roll.
It's been early tonight, yeah.
Exactly. So that's part of my. I'm not too concerned about that because, I mean, their offense was unbelievable. Mahomes throwing to wide open guys. You've got a wide open Noah Gray. You got, he's got the offense was clicking, the run game was working. And that's what I think the Chiefs kind of went away from is the run game worked all game. whether it was Isaiah Pacheco or whether it was Patrick Mahomes, but they got away from the run game. They got away from the power game, the actual power run game, under center, old school, because they've got good corners, as Dan alluded. They got good linebackers, but they got hit in the mouth a little bit today. You don't give up that many yards to Isaiah Pacheco a career game. They weren't worried about Pacheco, and that's what the Chiefs did. They ran it early and then got very chiefy and started to throw it a lot more. The offensive line did not play well. Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor, a couple big penalties there. So it ebbs and flows a little bit. I think you saw how big momentum is. Chiefs were up 70-0, had all the momentum. And then the safety kind of like jolted the Jets. And you alluded to the officials. I don't know how that's a safety when the face mask happened at the 2-yard line, but we can talk to that here in a little bit. So I think the Chiefs offense, was on pace to put up a whole bunch of points. Then they stalled a little bit. It was very uncharacteristic. And maybe it does go back to what Dan said about the linebackers dropping in coverage. Mahomes normally throws it over the top of those guys. And that time they were able to ease. I don't know if there's something wrong with Mahomes because he was so out of whack in the second and third quarter. But then in the fourth quarter, I mean, he was all right. Made some big throws, took care of business, and he's still the Mahomes threat when he runs the football. No one ever thinks of him as a dual threat quarterback, but I think he might have the most rushing yards when it comes to quarterbacks in the last 5 years. I mean, it's incredible at how many yards he gets. So not overly concerned about the offense. I do think they can get some stuff figured out. Plus, not many people have as good a corners and linebackers as the Jets do. I mean, we knew this Jet defense was really good. They were. That's not a surprise. The biggest play of the game, Brian Cook tackling Breece Hall in the open field. That was incredible. I don't think people realize how big that play was. Breece Hall normally turns around defenders, and Cook did. He spun around to try to, I'm going to try to flank him a little bit and force him to go one way. Turns around and is able to tackle him in the open field while spinning. Breece Hall normally makes that, and what do? 3 plays later, they got to punt the football. That was a game-saving. That's my play of the game in this one, because after that run, Jets didn't do squat. I thought that was just incredible. An incredible play by Brian Cook, and he saved an 90-yard touchdown or something like that. I mean, it was ridiculous. I thought that was so good. Really, really good.
I do want to get to a little bit more on Isaiah Pacheco. By the way, real quick, speaking to the point about Mahomes rushing yards, we did see, I think it was mentioned on the broadcast, I know I saw it on Twitter, that Mahomes now leads the Chiefs all-time record books for rushing yards among quarterbacks. Broke Alex Smith's previous record in this game tonight, and 51 yards on the ground. He was really good with his legs. A couple of big conversions late in the game obviously played a huge factor in the Chiefs holding on to win. Isaiah Pacheco, for his career, this was just the second time, and I know he's not been in the league all that long. It was one season and one playoff run entering tonight with a couple of games before this one this season. This is just the second time he's ever had 20 or more rushes in a game. Just the second time ever. It was last year, week 12, in that game against the Rams when LA started Bryce Perkins at quarterback and the Chiefs won 26-10 in a game that otherwise was entirely forgettable. Do you remember anything about that game other than the fact that it was Bryce Perkins starting for the Rams? No.
I think the Rams ran a fake punt, but that's all I got for you.
Yeah, it was a completely forgettable game, and the Chiefs just gave it to Pacheco 22 times to say, all right, run the ball and run the clock and get out of here. There's no point in us playing this game against, the hospital roster that was last year's Rams. 20 carries for just the second time, new career high in yards. It's just the second time he's ever gone for over 100 yards. He also did that last season in the game against the Chargers. The previous week, in fact, he had 107 yards against the Chargers week 11 last season. You can rely on this guy. He is able to take on a bigger workload. And I've told you guys on the show a few weeks ago, I am beyond ever assuming that this Chiefs cheetah is going to change its spots. We know that is not going to end up happening. They are who they are. The pass and run splits are what the pass and run splits will always be with an Andy Reid team. But you can trust this guy with the ball. He went for over 150 total yards from scrimmage because he had the 3 catches for over 40 yards as well. This is a guy you can give a bigger workload to, and I think this was a great example against a good defensive front, a really good linebacker core, and good tackling defensive backs as well, that, hey, he can go for big games. And if they're not going to pay attention to him, if they're not going to make him a focus of their defensive game plan, he can be a focal point of your offense. He doesn't just have to be the complimentary, run the clock, wear them down in the fourth quarter kind of guy. And Dan, I hope that we see a little bit more of that, even if it's not 20 to 25 carries a game. Know that he can be a key part of this offense, especially if these young receivers, everybody pretty much sans Kelsey, is having a hard time getting open. Get the ball to 10 a little bit more.
Yeah, and do it between the tackles. Jake, you're so right about the Chiefs running game. It's so much better when it's between the tackles and when they try to get those guys out to the perimeter. I mean, I think that the best Chiefs runs, and I have to go back and like eat the tape to make sure, but the best Chiefs running plays were between the tackles. Were inside of that tackle box. And the plays where they lost yardage were plays where they try to get Pacheco on the perimeter. And like, he's fast, but man, he runs hard. I resist any comparison anybody makes to Marshawn Lynch. One, because he's a Seahawk great, and two, he's my favorite football player probably of all time. But they kind of got a point when they compare Isaiah Pacheco to Marshawn Lynch. The way he runs hard, the way he seeks contact, the way he's able to get extra yards in a pile or bounce off guys and get those couple of extra yards, that's where he needs to feast. And I think the more that the Chiefs do that, it seems like an oxymoron, right? You got the greatest quarterback in the world, you should run the football more. But I do think that running the football more is going to set more things up in the passing game for the Chiefs to have even more success there. Because when they just got it to bare bones quick game stuff in the second half, really mostly in the fourth quarter, Rashee Rice had a big play. They got Kelsey more involved. Like, that stuff works. Mahomes is a really good point guard in the quick game. And, you know, he's got the strong arm, he's got the accuracy, and they've got guys who can make things happen after the catch. They've drafted for that purpose. That's why Rashee Rice is in there. That's why Sky Moore is a Chief. Like, they've drafted for that purpose. So I really do think that in the long run, the Chiefs are going to benefit if they are able to get the run established like they did tonight. But they've got to do it between the tackles more so than trying to run these guys on sweeps. And if I ever see a play called again where it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire trying to get to the edge, I'm going to have a conniption. Like,
no, they need to. I'm not kidding. That I understood why they kept Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now, like to start the season. Last year of his rookie deal, super cheap, knows the playbook. I get it. I you know, it's understandable. The guy has no juice left. He had the swing pass to the right.
Yes.
He had all the room to get that first down. And it's like, you know, he's like a little wind-up toy that I give my son, you know, in the bathtub, where I wind it up,
Mm-hmm.
and then I put it in there, and it just kind of just honestly, put LaMichael Pirine in there. Like, you should cut Clyde Edwards there. He has no burst, no nothing. Like, it's to the point why he's even on this team. And that play right there was a huge reason why he should not get any more snaps for this Chiefs team. He's not going to play next year. Like, if you want to keep him on the roster, that's fine. But elevate a running back, do what you got to do, make him inactive. He does not help this team anymore. He just does not.
Not to rehash a talking point that we and every sports talk show on earth beat to death over and over and over again during training camp this year, but do you want any more further proof that, in fact, running backs do matter, at least to a degree? Like, the difference between an A+ and a B+ might not be that big, but when you're relying on a C- D+ guy to make a play for you and he can't, all of a sudden, don't you wish that you had someone with a little bit more burst, a little bit more juice? Like, I had this discussion talking to some Packers friends of mine recently. Like, yeah, guys, suddenly when you don't have Aaron Jones, you got A.J. Dillon running for you. Running backs matter a whole lot. When you have to give Pacheco a spell and you got to rely on Clyde Edwards-Helaire to get to the edge, suddenly, hey, guys, running backs matter a whole lot. That talent actually does play a huge role.
Yeah, they can get rid of him or keep him on the roster as a fourth-string running back. I don't know why McKinnon wasn't in there at that situation. I know Jetta's only got so many, miles
Sure.
on the old odometer there, but that's the problem there with Pacheco or with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, Pacheco, he was terrific. And you don't want to run it all the time, but it was working in this game. It was fine. Keep going, keep working it. But they can't find a way to to just be normal, like be a normal team.
So with that in mind then, Dan, as we look ahead beyond this game, and obviously there are lessons to be learned from every game, win, loss, tie, whatever it ends up being, looking ahead to next week, this is going to be the third week in a row that the Chiefs play a below average team because the Bears are a tire fire. We all saw what happened with the Bears in week 4, an all-time meltdown against another crappy team in the Denver Broncos. The Jets played out of their mind and still on offense and still scored 20 points in the game that included a iffy safety. That's how they got to 20 points in this contest. And next week they play the Vikings, who theoretically should be able to move the ball offensively. And they're not any good either. They barely held on against a crappy Carolina team in week 4, and they had to get a defensive touchdown to help them get to that point. So what, Dan, do you think you can learn from this game, or what adjustments can be made from this game to make sure you don't end up in a similar dangerous type of letdown spot a week from now?
I think first thing, let Isaiah Pacheco eat. I think he set a tone early in the game that really helped the Chiefs offense get out to that 17-0 lead. And I think that the way that he plays and the way that he runs makes him a tone setting player. The other thing on defense, I think you got to find ways to get more pressure. But again, I don't know how much of what felt like a lack of pressure tonight was about the Chiefs not winning up front or about the majority of what the Chiefs were, or the Jets were doing on offense being very simplistic and just quick game stuff. Quick hitch, quick read, a lot of max protect. They had like 2 tight ends on every snap. There's a lot more max protect. They were double teaming Chris Jones all night, which, I mean, other teams do that. And Jones still had a sack. He's still on a sack a week pace. But that's what the Chiefs are going to have to do. They're going to have to, I think, generate a little bit more pressure, figure out if tonight's relative lack of was about scheme or whether that was about maybe they got beat in the trenches a little bit and they just have to be better next week. Those would be 2 things I would say.
Jake, do you have anything in mind that feels like it's a, an obvious thing that needs to be corrected schematically, execution wise, or did this just sort of feel like any given Sunday in the NFL where the talent level is, team to team so close, sometimes you're going to have your hands full. Just to real quick to jump in here, in our show picks for this week, for our college picks, I had Washington over Arizona by 18.5 points. That was the spread in that game. And I thought, look at this offense. They're fantastic. Arizona's not as good as they were last year. They don't have the same kind of athletes, same kind of defensive speed to keep up. Washington had their hands full all night. And I know college and the NFL are different, but that's football. That's what happens when you play a game with a weirdly shaped ball and when momentum and energy and things like that play a big role. Was this more of a game like that to you, or does it feel like there are maybe some cracks in the foundation that need to be paved up?
I don't think so. Also, this game isn't a game if Mahomes doesn't all of a sudden just, the floater wasn't working today. Yeah, I don't know what that was all about.
It's awful.
If he doesn't, and that's very uncharacteristic of Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't do that, then the Chiefs probably win this game by double digits, and we're not having this conversation. So much of this rides on number 15. It really, really does. And turnovers are the biggest aspect. You just mentioned the Vikings game. The Vikings don't win unless, the Carolina might win the game if Bryce Young doesn't lose his mind and fumble the football. The Bears probably win the game if Justin Fields doesn't fumble the football and result in the scoop and score. Like, the turnovers in games in which there are a no questions asked better team than the other is such a big factor. So to me, it's more so Mahomes when it comes to, is there any big concerns? You just can't turn it over. They had 2 turnovers and still ended up winning the football game. And that's a big reason why. And I hope people are ready for the referee talk, because it's going to be absolutely
already is
awful. And I look at it this way. If you complain about the officials, then you didn't do enough to win the game. Like, there are certain calls that I can agree with. We all remember the NFC Championship game, Roby Coleman. Like, that one, you can be upset, but they still had a chance to win in overtime, okay? They still did. In this situation, people are talking about the holding call on MVS. Was it a hold? Theoretically, yeah. He grabbed him by the shoulder pads up top and grabbed his jersey. Is that a hold? Yes, it is. It's a hold. Is it, a hold called every time? No, it isn't. They got a lucky call because I don't think Trey Smith held. The play by the horse collar tackle was not a horse collar tackle. Like, that's what's annoying when you are the Chiefs and now you're this good. Everybody thinks you're going to get the benefit of the doubt when you could argue that the Chiefs got more calls against them in this game than the Jets did. I mean, the Chiefs got against them the face mask call that ended up being a safety. That's not a safety. The horse collar tackle, that's not a horse collar tackle. The hold on Trey Smith at the end of the game, not a blatant hold. I mean, a lot of these, but it's going to be real, real bad because it's the Chiefs. If this were any other team, no one is going to be talking about the officials.
Honestly, I'm a firm believer that over, the timeline of human existence, every team is going to have an equal number of good calls and bad calls go against them. And while sure, you look at the end of the game, it was the holding call correct, but maybe flimsy. Sure. Were there other things that were maybe ticky-tack that benefited the Chiefs? Okay, sure. You know what else? The Jets got a free safety on a completely botched call. We had Derek Nottie get called for a horse collar tackle when he didn't even tackle the guy by the back. He had it by the front while he was getting face masked. Like, you can't, to me, because I agree with you, Jake. Like, if you are going to blame the refs for a loss, that to me just says you're complaining because your team didn't do enough to actually end up winning the game. So that discourse is going to be out there. We are not going to focus on that because we have self-respect and respect for the actual athletes and the game that's being played itself. But I'm sure Twitter, Instagram, wherever the guys at your barbershop are already taking off with those takes. In the end, yeah, that's me. That's fine. I said that. No, that is anyway, even with all of that, even with the somewhat clinch-worthy moments throughout the game, the Kansas City Chiefs come away with the win, 23-20, 3-1 on the season, going into a matchup with the Minnesota Vikings coming up next week. We will recap this game in full and so much more coming up on 580 Sports Talk Monday from 2 until 6. We'll be joined by Matt Verderam of Sports Illustrated. We'll hear from Andy Reid and so much more coming up on the show. Again, that's coming up Monday from 2 until 6 on 580 WIBW, online 580WIBW.com, and on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube channel. So until then, for Dan Lucero, for Jake LeBon, I am Brendan Dworzinski. Thank you so much for joining us on the Chiefs Instant Reaction postgame show, and we will talk to you guys coming up